Whispers say Jung stumbled upon a terrifying truth. Some people see things others can't, and it destroys them. Is it intuition, madness, or something else entirely? What Jung revealed might change how you see yourself. Watch till the end and hit subscribe for more hidden psychology secrets. In 913, during one of the most difficult seasons of his own life, Carl Jung encountered a patient unlike any he had ever seen. Jung himself was wrestling with visions, dreams, and inner chaos after breaking away from Freud. But what shocked him wasn't his own turmoil, it was the woman who came to him for help. She wasn't delusional, and she wasn't unstable. In fact, she had a gift that was almost impossible to explain. She could step into any room and instantly feel the atmosphere. She knew who was pretending, who was holding back tears, and who was silently angry. Lies, secrets, and hidden resentments were like open books to her. The more Jung listened, the more unsettled he became. Her observations weren't vague guesses. They were frighteningly accurate. Every time he checked, her descriptions lined up with the truth. Jung realized he wasn't treating an illness at all. He was witnessing something far more mysterious, a rare form of perception so sharp it became dangerous. At first, it might sound like a superpower. Imagine having the ability to see through facades, to catch what no one else notices, to understand people on a level deeper than words. But Jung quickly realized this gift came with a hidden curse. This patient struggled to keep friendships. People didn't feel safe around her. They felt exposed, almost naked in her presence. Small talk was impossible because she always pierced through the surface. Employers found her unsettling. Even in simple social settings, her presence disrupted the unspoken rules that keep groups running smoothly. She was not broken, she was burdened. And that was the first thing Jung understood. Seeing too much of reality is not an advantage when everyone else prefers the illusion. But Jung also knew this wasn't just one woman. He began to see the same pattern in other patients, and it terrified him. Because what he discovered next revealed that the cost of extraordinary perception wasn't just loneliness, it was something much darker. Jung eventually gave this phenomenon a name: differentiated perception. It was the ability to detect not just conscious behavior, but the unconscious layers beneath it. These individuals noticed the sadness hidden behind a smile, the silent tension in a group, the secret motivations that others couldn't even admit to themselves. On the surface, that sounds like wisdom, but Jung saw the hidden danger. Societies, families, and groups survive partly because people agree not to see everything. There are silent rules, collective blind spots, and unspoken agreements that keep life functioning. When someone perceives what nobody else dares to acknowledge, they don't just stand out, they destabilize the entire structure. They don't mean to cause disruption, but their very presence is enough to break the illusions everyone else relies on. That's why Jung called this discovery dangerous. Not because the perception was wrong, but because it was too right. And the most disturbing part, these people didn't just see the truth. They became the target of unconscious hostility for exposing it. Jung noticed a strange and painful pattern. Whenever these highly perceptive people shared what they saw, no matter how gently, it almost always backfired. If they mentioned that someone seemed troubled, they'd be accused of being negative. If they pointed out a problem, they'd be blamed for causing drama. If they voiced a concern, people lashed out as though the observer was the problem. Jung understood this as shadow projection. People don't like having their hidden flaws or secret pain exposed. So instead of facing those truths, they project their discomfort onto the one holding up the mirror. The result? The perceptive person becomes the scapegoat. The one who sees most clearly ends up carrying the blame for everything others can't face. And Jung realized it wasn't just a coincidence. It was a built-in defense mechanism of the unconscious mind. Instead of integrating the shadow, people attack the person who reflects it. But not all perceptive people carry this gift in the same way. Jung found there were 4 very different types, each with its own burden, each with its own risk. The 4 types of perceivers. The first type was the feeling intuitive. These individuals absorbed emotions like sponges. If someone in the room was angry, they felt it as though it were their own anger. If someone was sad, they carried that sadness inside themselves. The problem? They often couldn't tell where their feelings ended and others' feelings began. The second type was the thinking intuitive. These people didn't just notice emotions, they saw the hidden patterns that led to future outcomes. Jung described them predicting relationship collapses or personal breakdowns long before anyone else noticed the warning signs. It wasn't cold logic. It was unconscious pattern recognition so advanced, it bordered on eerie. The third type was the sensation intuitive. They sensed how inner struggles showed up in the body. They could pick up on fatigue, tension, or illness before the person even admitted something was wrong. In a way, they became early warning systems for both emotional and physical well-being. And then there was the pure intuitive, perhaps the rarest and the most overwhelmed. These individuals perceived everything, the emotions, the patterns, the energy, but lacked the structure to process it. Their gift flooded them constantly, leaving them in a state of confusion and exhaustion. Jung realized that no matter the type, the danger wasn't just in what they saw, it was in how the world responded to them. The 3 dangers Jung warned about. Jung identified 3 specific risks for people with this extraordinary perception. The first was collective disruption. By seeing what others agreed to ignore, they became a threat to group stability. Families, workplaces, and even societies survive on shared illusions. When someone refuses to play along, the system feels threatened. The second was psychological isolation. These individuals lived in a different reality. What they saw was invisible to most people. The result was a deep sense of alienation, like living on an island of awareness while everyone else floated in unconscious waters. The third, and most terrifying, was identity dissolution. By absorbing so much unconscious material from others, they risked losing themselves completely. Boundaries blurred, their inner world became mixed with what they picked up from their environment. Jung called this participation mystique, the dissolving of individuality into the collective unconscious. For Jung, this was not a minor inconvenience. It was a genuine danger. And the only solution was integration. Jung's process of integration. Jung believed the key wasn't to shut down perception, but to develop a conscious relationship with it. He called this process individuation. The first phase was recognition and differentiation. Perceptive people had to learn which feelings were theirs and which belonged to others. Jung advised periods of solitude, quiet time to let external material settle until their authentic voice became clear. The second phase was shadow integration. Jung noticed that many who see shadows in others struggle most with their own. The less you accept your capacity for selfishness, fear, or pride, the more disturbing it becomes when you notice it in others. By owning their own shadow, they reduce the intensity of what they saw outside themselves. The third phase was conscious participation. This was the hardest. Instead of retreating or being overwhelmed, they learned to stay engaged with others while holding their boundaries. They became containers, able to hold what they perceived without losing themselves in it. But Jung didn't only see this in patients, he experienced it personally. Jung's personal struggle. After his split from Freud, Jung went through what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. Visions and inner images flooded him. At times, he feared he was slipping into madness, but instead of resisting, he studied his experiences carefully. He painted, he wrote, and he turned his inner storm into material for psychological research. His private notes from this period later became the Red Book. Jung realized that what nearly destroyed him was the same thing his patients struggled with: overwhelming perception. And by working through it, he developed the very methods that would later save others. But not everyone managed to integrate their perception as he did. Some collapsed under the weight of it, others transformed, and the difference between collapse and transformation became one of Jung's deepest obsessions. Take the philosopher Nietzsche, for example. His insights cut through every illusion: religion, society, morality. He saw deeper than most people could handle, but instead of integrating his perception, he became consumed by it. His brilliance turned into torment. Jung considered him an example of what happens when perception stays unbalanced. On the other hand, Jung admired figures like the medieval mystic Meister Eckhart. Eckhart had profound intuition, but he channeled it into wisdom and service. Instead of overwhelming others, his insights became nourishment. He embodied humility, using perception not as a weapon, but as guidance. Jung himself was a living example of the second path, transformation instead of collapse. But he also noticed that even those with great potential could fall into subtle traps. The first trap Jung warned about was inflation. This happens when someone identifies too strongly with their gift. They start to believe they're chosen, special, or the only one who sees the truth. But instead of connection, this creates arrogance and isolation. The second trap was withdrawal. Some perceptive people, tired of rejection, retreat completely. They convince themselves that others aren't worth their time. But Jung saw this not as wisdom, but as defeat. The third trap was the helper's identity. Many lose themselves in trying to save everyone else. They become addicted to being needed, but in the process, they forget their own development. And finally, there was the overwhelm return. Even those who integrate their perception can regress. Stress, trauma, or exhaustion can cause old patterns to return. Jung emphasized that integration isn't permanent, it's a lifelong process. So what keeps perception healthy and balanced? Jung left behind daily practices that turned chaos into clarity. The first practice was solitude, not loneliness, but intentional time alone to clear away the noise and hear your own inner voice. The second was conscious choice. Instead of using your perception all the time, choose when and with whom to engage it. Not every situation deserves your full depth. The third was shadow work. Regularly reflect on your own hidden motives, so you don't unconsciously project them onto others. The fourth was supportive connections. Surround yourself with people who understand, even if it's only a few. Safe relationships are essential for staying grounded. And finally, creative expression. Jung painted, wrote, and built stone towers. For others, it might be music, storytelling, or art. The goal is to give overwhelming perception a safe outlet. Because when used wisely, this ability isn't just personal. It has a collective purpose. Jung believed that highly perceptive individuals weren't accidents. They were ahead of their time. He called them pioneers of consciousness, people who experienced truths that society wasn't yet ready to handle. Throughout history, these individuals showed up as visionaries, mystics, and creators. They suffered for seeing too much, but they also prepared the way for cultural change. Jung wrote that what first appears in one person often becomes collective wisdom later. The individual is like a testing ground for what humanity will eventually need. And maybe that's why your struggles feel so heavy. Maybe they're not just about you. Maybe they're a reflection of what the world hasn't learned to face yet. Transformation stages. Jung described 4 key stages of turning this dangerous perception into wisdom. Stage 1, recognition without overwhelm, accepting your gift without letting it crush you. Stage 2, integration without isolation, learning to live authentically while staying connected to others. Stage 3, service without sacrifice, offering your perception as a gift rather than carrying it as a burden. Stage 4, legacy without attachment, using your perception to serve the future without needing recognition in the present. The message was simple but powerful. It's not about saving the world. It's about becoming fully yourself and letting that authenticity naturally ripple outward. Jung's most dangerous discovery was never about madness. It was about what happens when people see what others can't. Some collapse under the weight of it. Others transform and become exactly what society needs most. So here's the question. Do you see yourself in this story? Do you recognize parts of yourself in the feeling intuitive, the thinking intuitive, the sensation intuitive, or the pure intuitive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear which type resonates with you. And if this opened your eyes, check out my video on Jung's 7 psychological places that can quietly drain your mind. It might explain why certain environments feel so toxic for people like you. Remember this, your gift isn't a curse. It's the way you carry it that makes the difference. The world may not always understand you, but it needs you more than it knows.